Okay, we have special products, and in the section of special products, we are still going to be doing the same thing we did in our multiplying polynomial section, and I think that's why when I split apart the polynomial section into 3, 3, and 3, 4 going with the exponents, I wasn't really that worried because a lot of people do really well with the distributive polynomials, the combining the like terms in that section, and this section, the special products. So this is not going to be that difficult of a test either. Now, the division of the polynomials is a little harder for most students, but these two first sections are usually what makes it easier. So let's think about what it means to have a exponent. And this is what we're doing first. So when I have an exponent to something, remember that's whatever's in that parentheses times itself 2 times. So that's the same thing as 2x plus 9 times itself 2x plus 9. Now, what does this look like? This looks like the same type problem that we had in our last section. So what we're going to do is distribute, just the same thing. So I'm going to distribute that 2x to the 2x, and I'm going to get 4x squared. The 2x to the 9, and that's going to give me 18x. Okay, now I'm going to distribute the 9. So I have 9 to the 2x, that gives me 18x. And the 9 to the 9 gives me 81. So just like we had in our last section, we are going to be doing kind of like a FOIL method, multiplying a binomial times a binomial. So anytime you see this times itself 2 times, or this squared, you're going to write it as a product and then distribute. Now remember, when we have a binomial times a binomial, most of the time the two middle terms are what's like. So in simplest form, I have 4x squared plus 36x plus 81. Okay, and I'm going to give you another hint as this goes on, so something else that you can look for. So again, number 2, I'm going to write this whole thing as 6x plus 5 times itself. There are no shortcuts. You can't say 6x squared and then 5 squared and get the answer. You'll be missing your middle term. So if there was a shortcut, I would tell you, because I think that it's very important for you to not only do math the easiest way, but be aware of all the different ways that I know. So I would always tell you of a shortcut if I knew one. So I'm going to distribute that 6x to the 6, and I'm going to get 36x squared. 6x to the 5, and I'm going to get 30x. Now I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to distribute that 5 to the 6x and get 30x, and the 5 to the 5 and get 25. Okay? Again, the middle terms are like, so I have 36x squared, and I'm going to get 30 plus 30 is 60, so positive 60x plus 25. Now looking at the first example and looking at the second example, notice something very similar. The two middle terms are exactly the same. That's how it's going to be. Anytime you have something times itself or something squared, your two middle terms are always going to be exactly the same. So you will always have the same sign. They're going to be the same number, the same sign. You're going to add and keep the sign. So just something to look out for when you're squaring a binomial. You always are going to have the same number with the same sign in the middle of that polynomial that you're adding like terms to. All right, and we're going to continue with these two on bottom. So I have x minus 6 times itself. And so I'm going to say x times x is x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. Now I'm going to distribute this negative 6 to the x and get negative 6x. Negative 6 to the negative 6 and get positive 36. Now why is it positive? Because I have a negative times a negative, and that gives me a positive. Again, my terms are like in the middle, and they're exactly the same. So I have x squared, the same sign, add and keep the sign, so I'm going to have a negative 12x plus 36. Okay? And we'll do this last one, and then I'm going to show you another correlation between what we did at the top and what we're doing at the bottom. So I'm going to have the x squared minus 3y times itself, x squared minus 3y. And I'm going to distribute. Now this one's a little harder because we have bigger exponents. So I'm going to say x squared to the x squared, and that gives me x to the 4th. X squared times a negative 3y gives me a negative 3x squared y. Remember, if it's not the same variables, you just put them together. Now I'm going to distribute the negative 3y to the x squared, and I get negative 3. And I always put my variables in alphabetical order. So I'm going to put my x squared first because it's going to make it easier when we have like terms to determine whether they're like or not. So the negative 3y to the x squared I wrote as negative 3x squared y. Negative 3y times negative 3y is going to be a positive 9y squared. And again, our two middle terms are like. They're exactly the same. Negative 3x squared y, negative 3x squared y. So that means I'm going to bring down my x to the 4th, and I have the same sign, so I'm going to add and keep the sign. So I'm going to have a negative 6x squared y, and bring down my plus 9y squared. Now, the reason why I have them written in green and red is because I want you to notice that if there is a plus sign in between, you're going to have pluses on both of them. If there was a minus sign in between, you're going to have minus signs on both of them. And notice that that's true on all of them. Now, I said they were going to be the same sign, and they're going to be the same number. So if there's a plus, they're both going to be plus, and it's going to be the same number. If it's a minus, they're both going to be minus, and it's going to be the same number. Okay, and we'll pick up on the back page in the next video.